Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we will be talking about Postman. This is an application that I use as an SAP consultant to work on some API testing. This is going to be an introductory sort of tutorial, and before we officially start, I wanted to mention that this is not going to be a full-blown technical guide for developers. So the goal for my tutorial, or at least this video, is to help functional consultants get acquainted with the application. For those of you who are not familiar yet with APIs, you can read my blog post on SAP interfaces in a nutshell. This includes API. Or for those of you who prefer a video version of that one, then you can browse through the videos on this channel. Just so we're organized, I will first start off with the purpose, then I'm going to move on to the how-to, and I will include additional information for those of you who are interested. And as always, towards the end, I will be providing a summary just so you guys get a quick snapshot of everything that we've discussed. Let's start off with the purpose. So if you were to search on Postman, or at least API testing in SAP, you will most likely see a lot of results that focus on the technical perspective of the testing or the how-tos, so on and so forth. In this tutorial, I will try to explain the concepts the simplest way I can. And since this is an introductory post, let's try to leave most of the technical jargon out the window, at least for now. So to get started, let us try and get acquainted with some words. First off, we have Postman, and this is simply an application that is used for API development. So this is where you can create, share, test, and even document APIs. For those of you who are interested, you can go to the official website, so I have it linked over here. And it is in the same website where you can download the Postman application and of course install the software to get started. Next, we have API, and this stands for Application Programming Interface. From my previous blog post on SAP interfaces, I mentioned that you can think of APIs as an agreement or a contract between applications. And of course, the API doesn't care about the application, it just needs to fulfill the contract. Quote unquote, it's end of the deal. Next, we have SAP Environment, and straightforward, this is the SAP application or the system that you are currently working with. This time, I will share some example use cases for using Postman. I mentioned here that as a functional consultant, you may deal with a lot of standard configurations and even custom developments in SAP. Of course, in an overall architectural perspective, it is highly likely that you will encounter interfaces or integrations involved with the SAP systems that you are dealing with. And since there are integrations involved, several other systems, it is possible that your SAP system is connected to non-SAP systems. Given the current trend or the developments in a technical perspective, it is highly likely that those other non-SAP systems will be using APIs to retrieve and or send data to and from SAP. So for non-SAP systems, it is possible that they're using APIs as their mode of communication. So if they need data from SAP, they'll use APIs. If SAP needs data from this non-SAP system or this third-party application, then it's possible that the way to do it would be through the utilization of APIs. I also mentioned that the usual scenario is that each third-party system will have its own set of experts or IT professionals that pretty much know the ins and outs of that system. And you being an SAP consultant, you would be, of course, focused on SAP. You would know the ins and outs of SAP, but not necessarily those third-party applications. This is where the challenge kicks in terms of the type of testing or the type of tasks that you need to accomplish. So here I included what if you need to do the following tasks. I have it itemized over here. Some examples include testing the connection between those systems, testing the API data flow, performing regression testing, simulating the data flow, and the list goes on. So in a way, this does involve your SAP system, but the challenge lies on the fact that the SAP system is integrated with a third-party system and you don't necessarily know how to deal with that. Overall, those tasks may seem like they require a lot of effort, and by a lot of effort, I mean you need to do a lot of coordination. I did include a sample image over here. It's a simple diagram, and you can see that there are several systems connected to your SAP system. My example here is that for you to test on the first scenario, you need to contact system A, maybe an IT support or an expert on that system, to trigger some sort of command for SAP to provide some sort of data. And the next scenario would require you to contact system B, IT support, or the expert to trigger another command to SAP. So it follows the same pattern where you're dealing with a lot of systems and a lot of triggers. You can also add on to that scenario and say that the first time you have asked the expert of system A to trigger that command to SAP, it was not successful because of missing configurations in SAP or even issues on their side. And this basically means that after you work on that missing configuration, you have to ask the System A expert to retrigger the command again, and as you can see, it will take a lot of time. This is a completely valid scenario, and this happens a lot. There could be instances wherein the first testing doesn't go as planned. This time, let us take into consideration the test cases you have. Let's say that the interfaces have been running smoothly for over a year or two, and there are plans to update a certain feature in SAP. So may it be a patch or a big change in a custom program, so on and so forth. Those test cases are now regression test scenarios, and you need to be able to work on this regression testing in a short amount of time. And of course, you have to ensure that the interfaces are still working after the system update. This brings us to the question, okay, but how do I speed things up? This is where Postman comes into the picture. I mentioned that you can use the application to assist you with the testing and communication checks as a first level check. So in this case, Postman can serve as your tool to mimic those non-SAP systems or those third-party applications, so that before you actually go through that extensive communication coordination route, you can perform some first-level checks to ensure that the connection is okay with SAP, it's behaving as expected, your configurations in SAP for those interfaces are okay. So this, in a way, saves up a lot of time. Here I also mentioned that if you need to replicate some scenarios in your SAP test environment, you can also use Postman as your tool to mimic those third-party systems involved. In terms of replicating those scenarios, I included an example. So let's say that a non-SAP system is sending data to SAP and it stores data in a custom table. If that certain data does not exist in your test environment, you can use Postman to send the data to SAP and replicate that scenario. So if it doesn't exist yet in the system and you have Postman as your tool to create this test data, then you can go for that option. You need to keep in mind the security policies and the system architecture policies of your organization. So in most cases, a direct linkage or connection between a non-SAP system and an SAP system is not allowed. So This is part of the best practices, and as such, you will most likely see an instance of an SAP PO or SAP I between those two systems. So here I've updated the diagram. You still have system A, B, C, and you have SAP system over here. The only difference is that we included an SAP PO in between, so it meets certain security standards or the system architectural policies of some organizations. Now that we're done with this section, we're going to move on to the how-to. And again, this is in context of a functional consultant. I mentioned here that it is advisable that a developer, so the person who is in charge of the API development or integration with SAP, it is advised that the developer work on the Postman environment and collection setup from scratch, because it is most likely that the developer would know the settings to establish a connection to the SAP environments involved. So the idea here is that the Postman environment and collection can be exported. It can be exported and provided to you, so that you as a functional consultant can simply import them into your Postman application and focus on the functional testing or checks. Here you'll see the steps for the setup. First, you need to download the Postman and you can create an account. It is free. Next, what you want to do is open the Postman and log in using that free account. This is the screenshot. The next thing you want to do is import your SAP environment. So this is assuming that the developer has provided you with those exports. In most cases, it can be in a .postman_environment.json format. Simply go to your workspace and import the SAP environments that you need. You can also select the Environments tab and click on the Import button over here. Next, what you want to do is click on Import and select the Postman environments provided by the developer. So this is an example screenshot, and you'll see that I have the postman_environment.json files. Once done, you should see a notification that the environment has been imported. And of course, once you're done importing all of those environments, you should see the list of environments that are now available to you. So here I have highlighted the environment selection over here. So if you click on the drop down, you should see the several SAP environments that you have imported. There are more details over here. You can refer to the blog post. Once you're done with the environments, the next step would be to import your collections or collection. And again, this would mean that this is assuming that the developer has provided you with the export. So in this case, I have the postman_collection.json file. What I want to do is go to my workspace, click on the collections tab, and click on import so that I can quickly select the postman_collection file and click on import. Once you're done, you should see the imported collection in the collection tab. So it should look something like this. And I added a bit of a color scheme so that you guys can associate them with one another. If you were to explore further, you'll see that each method will have the following tabs. For example, parameters, authorization headers, body, pre-request script, tests and settings, so on and so forth. This is what I'm talking about. You've got the parameters here, authorization, headers, body, pre-request script, so on and so forth. And at this point, this is something that you will see each time that you click on a certain method. So if I click on the get over here, the get single, so on and so forth, you should see this type of screen on the right side. You'll also notice that I have highlighted this box in blue because this is where you specify the SAP environment that you're working with. Now that you're done with the setup, what you want to do is try and test the connection, which is the get method. When we say we're trying to work on the get method, you're just obtaining data from SAP and not necessarily changing anything. So in this case, we can try to mimic the third-party system by attempting to request data from SAP or ask data from SAP. All you have to do is click on the method that you're concerned with and be sure to select the environment that you will be testing with. So in this case, I have selected the get single method, and you have the list of variables available over here. What I want to do is update the text. You can simply follow the instructions over here. Let's say that I know that there is an order number 11232231 in SAP. I know that this exists in SAP, so I want to test the connection. Enter this detail in the request and click on the send button. But before clicking the send button, I need to be sure that, okay, I have indicated the SAP environment that I'm concerned with. So in this case, it's SAP QoS or quality environment, so I'm okay with that. Once I click on send, it should have the sending notification over here, and you'll see that there's a sending request screen. If the requested data exists in SAP, you should see an example result below. So you'll see that we have 200 OK, and you will see the details of the requested data. So you'll see that I have the order number, customer number, and other details defined by the API. This type of detail will depend on how the API was developed. So if your API is trying to request for employee names, for example, then you should expect employee names to show up over here. And of course, you can cross-check by viewing the custom SAP table data. In this example, let's say that there's a custom table z_order, and you'll see that I have the order number over here and the other fields related to this custom table. However, in the case that the requested data does not exist in SAP, you should receive the example result below. So you have a 400 bad request, and you'll see the notification that the requested data does not exist in the system. And you can, of course, cross-check by viewing the custom table as well. So in this example, I have shown you a screenshot saying that no values exist for the data that you asked for. Again, these are just examples, and you need to be able to know the behavior of the API, what type of data is the API requesting, so on and so forth. Now that we're done with the get method, we can try to test the connection by using the post method. So this is important to note that when you're using a post method, this is something that changes or updates the SAP data in a way that you're adding data onto SAP, you're updating, so on and so forth. So in most cases, we're dealing with APIs that get data from SAP instead of actually posting to SAP. It really depends on the API's designed. But in case that you have a post method or something that updates the data in SAP, you can do the same approach. Simply click on the post method, which is the create, and you can click on the body over here so that you can update the details. Let's say that this API will store the order number, customer number, company code, as well as the type of order. This type of details will be sent to SAP and stored in the custom table. So in case you have something similar to this, you can update the body with the details that you want to post in SAP, and be sure to select the proper SAP environment again and then click on post. So it's the same behavior or approach as the get method. I have more details over here for you to refer to. And in case that the requested data is successfully posted, you should receive the example result below. So you'll see that I have a 201 created status, and you can cross-check by viewing the custom SAP table. That's basically it. So we covered the setup, testing in terms of getting and posting data to SAP. This time we're going to move on to additional information. If you're starting a project, meaning to say you're in the scenario of starting a new API integration, the developer will need some connectivity details for the environment setup. So the scenarios above takes into consideration that the connection has already been established and all of the prerequisites are complete. So all that is left is to work on that additional testing for post-go live scenarios, so on and so forth. Some examples of connectivity details would be the system user ID that the application will be using, URLs involved, the proxy, so on and so forth. Those are pretty much the technicalities of it, or the examples. Of course, there are more diverse scenarios and use cases for Postman and SAP API testing. This is just a simple overview. I hope it was simple for you guys. And again, the goal was to help give you an insight to this testing option. To summarize everything, for the purpose, basically we want to quickly test the connection and or simulate the API data flow between third-party systems and SAP, because it is with Postman that you can mimic the non-SAP system. For the how-to setup, I mentioned that you can download Postman, create your free account, import the Postman environments and collections. Next, how to test the connection. Basically, what you want to do is utilize the get method. Here, you're not changing anything and you're just trying to retrieve data from SAP. And of course, we have the post method. This one actually updates the data or creates new data in SAP. All you need to do is update the data request following the expected format and click on the send button. Again, be sure to select the SAP environment that you're working on. It is important to double check as needed. So in case all of those connections work, for example, for development environment, for QoS, for staging systems, so on and so forth, even production, you need to be sure that you're selecting the right environment to avoid any issues or mistakes. I hope this helps. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.